Greetings everybody, and thank you for joining Ealing Abbey this morning. Pope Francis's Apostolic letter is called Patris, Corde, with a Father's heart. It is written to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the proclamation of St. Joseph as patron of the Universal Church. Pope Francis writes out of a profound sympathy, empathy, solidarity for each one of us suffering in this terrible pandemic. He wants to express in the most accessible way possible, the most homely way possible. So he invites us to walk with Joseph, the loving father, mostly silent, and we can imagine often mulling over life in silence and hiddenness. Let him be our companion, our friend on this journey, in a society devastated by COVID. Pope Francis, in his concern and desire to give us courage, is saying that even when we are in a situation we can't control, a situation in which all our freedoms have been removed, and our ways of living and doing are no longer possible, and there is much suffering, there is a way of companionship, a way of living at a very profound level in these strange times. There is a way of being the best we can be. How? Pope Francis presents St. Joseph to be our companion on this journey. He will gently show us how to be the best we can be. And we say, how is this possible? Joseph is guided by his faith, a faith that guides him and gives meaning to the very context in which he finds himself. However, his faith is not simply a belief or a set of beliefs. It is fundamentally a relationship. Faith is a relationship that enables him to discern and make decisions. It is that self-understanding that he has a true friendship with God. To be truly human means that the way I live is shaped, configured by that relationship that I have with my God. I am never alone. The consequence of this, Pope Francis says, is to live shared responsibility with each other. It is to share responsibility with each other for the situation we are in. Such a faith, such a way of living has grasped and knows that it is our relationship with the divine that shapes and configures that way and the way I behave and relate to all others. Indeed, we are imago Dei, we are made in his image. Every human person, says Thomas Aquinas, is a capax Dei. I am a capacity for God, a capacity for utter goodness. Pope Francis is asking us to walk with Joseph and be with those who are overlooked, who don't get the headlines. He says our lives are woven together and sustained by ordinary people. And so he has the fullest of praise for doctors, nurses, shopkeepers, supermarket workers, cleaning personnel, caregivers, transport workers, and all those men and women who work to provide essential services, public safety, volunteers, priests, men and women religious, and many others. Then Francis gives thanks for the fathers, the mothers, grandparents, teachers, and many others who deal with crises, emergencies, and demands every day. And there are those who pray and intercede for the good of all. So how is Joseph a man for our times? A man in the background, unnoticed, always discreet, and often hidden. Why is Joseph an amazing guide in these fragmented times? How did he know to discern and make such choices? How could he have played such a role in the history of our salvation and in the very life of Jesus Christ himself? St. John Chrysostom said of Joseph that Joseph was a man at the service of the entire plan of salvation. at the service of the entire plan of salvation. And so are we, in a way. Joseph achieved this by the way he lived his Hebrew Jewish vocation. So our question is, what was the formation, what was the pedagogy that educated Joseph, a man with a head and heart so united in his faith? What guided Joseph in all the tough decisions he had to make? At the end of chapter 1, Pope Francis gives us the answer. Joseph was formed in the faith of the Old Testament. Joseph is the bridge between the Old Testament and the New. He knows who God is and that God is not outside the story of history and daily events. Joseph is a man of that covenant, a covenant that emerges in and through the history of God's people. That history gradually unfolds. That history gradually unfolds as God's loving plan and wish to establish a mutually binding relationship, a loving, life-giving relationship with all humanity. This loving plan of God's is to mend what Adam and Eve had broken at creation, alienating us from that loving destiny. God made covenants with Noah, Abraham, Moses, and David, always promising God's care and God's wanting to be close to us. But it is Jesus Christ who gives us the new covenant. We can say that all creation and all humanity can enjoy and look forward to the fullness of life intended for us from the very beginning. Joseph understands God's plan of mutual friendship with his people. We are with him. When Joseph has his first great shock that Mary is pregnant, Joseph believes what the angel says and does what he is asked to do. He took his wife to his home. Joseph witnesses the visit of the Magi. We don't know what he said or thought, but then he has to rush off with Mary and the baby as a refugee to escape the massacre of the innocents. Joseph's faith is that God is with him, guiding him, and he with God in every decision. And I think it's very interesting to note that he always decides in favor of what causes the least suffering to the other. Teilhard de Chardin says that the greatest challenge for us is how to sanctify our human actions and thoughts, how to sanctify them. He writes that in his lovely book, Le Milieu Divin. Joseph's living of his faith in all his responsibilities and cares gives us the solution. In chapter 2, Pope Francis says, in Joseph, Jesus saw the tender love of God. In Joseph, Jesus saw the tender love of God. Pope Francis is concerned that we can condemn our own shortcomings and failures, which make us intolerant and unkind to others. In other words, self-knowledge about the way I relate is essential. We have to encounter God's mercy, he says, and the experience of that is in the sacrament of reconciliation. We will, says Francis, see how God can work even through our fears, our frailties, and our weaknesses. God works through them. Failing in kindness, misjudging, being unhelpful, being selfish, simply reveals our own inability to know ourselves and to accept ourselves. Pope Francis is really saying, in the way he invites us to be with Joseph, that our faith is the gift of ongoing conversion, and so to go deeper into God's love and deeper into that relationship. The letter goes on to develop that all things work together unto good, and for those who love God. Faith is not a panacea, it is not a comfortable formula or solution. It is to grasp what it means to be a person in relationship with God, and so in relationship with all others, far and near. We are never apart. The words Patris, Corde, with a father's heart are truly developed in the letter. The companionship of the letter leads us on through the chapters. However, the word father may be very uncomfortable or even painful for some. Pope Francis takes care to say that fathers are not born, they are made. Fathers are not born, they are made. Words are only symbols that carry specific meaning. Pope Francis certainly gives meaning to the word. It's a word that invites us to deepen our understanding of our faith and what it means to be loved by God, and how to live that faith in self-understanding, to reflect God's love. Our faith guides us and challenges us to be the best we can be in all that we are and are called to do. It is significant that the great Teresa of Avila had a very special friend in St. Joseph. She loved friendship anyway. Teresa died in 1582, is one of the most loved spiritual saints in history. She is known as a great mystic, a saint, a most courageous reformer. She's very down to earth and she loves many friends. Teresa had great administrative skills and founded many convents, yet she spent much of her life under the supervision and the suffering of the terrible Spanish Inquisition. St. Joseph was her great friend and great protector. There is a lovely story told by Teresa, or told in the foundations. There is the story of Teresa with 10 nuns and a couple of priests. They're on their way in a wagon with horses, I suppose, or donkeys, to make a foundation of a new convent in Beas, which is near Castile. On the way, they took a wrong turn and they realized they were lost. So Teresa asked everyone to pray to St. Joseph. At once, everyone heard a distant voice telling them to stop, otherwise they would fall over a precipice. They stopped and discovered a great chasm opening up underneath the wagon wheels. They were too frightened to turn around, and the voice told them, go backwards very gently for 100 turns of the wheel. They arrived in Beas in the sunlight. Teresa knew that the voice was that of her great friend, St. Joseph. So let us enter into that beautiful, sensitive, and caring letter of St. Francis and find friendship with Joseph. Pope Francis certainly renews confidence in St. Joseph, that to know that we are loved by God, if we really believe that, we can reflect all that we are and all that we can do. He is that, says Pope Francis, he is that teacher, that loving and encouraging father so needed today. Thank you, Pope Francis, for your love and care of all God's people and for your confidence in us. Saint Joseph, pray for all of us. Amen.